Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for March 20th, 2018. We had a workshop at 6 o'clock that was not televised, and we already did the Pledge of Allegiance. So I will start the televised portion of our meeting with announcements and proclamations, and it's with great honor that I read the proclamation for Barry Greener. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas Barry Greener began his career in Walpole on September 1st, 1972 as a teacher for the Walpole school system in physical education, social studies, and history. And whereas Barry Greener accepted a coaching position in 1972 and assisted Coach John Lee for several years and served as the offensive line coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator for more than 3 decades. And whereas Barry Greener served as the head football coach from 2009 until he announced he would be stepping down in 2017. And whereas Barry Greener, during his 9 years as head coach of the Rebels, won the Bay State Herget title 3 times. And whereas Barry Greener has been the mainstay of the football program and is by far one of the hardest working and dedicated people, he utilized his knowledge, wisdom, and passion to continually work on ways to improve the team. And whereas Barry Greener served 40 years coaching football and is most deserving of the appreciation of the Walpole community for his honor and devotion, as well as his mentorship of Walpole students, ensuring that they work as hard in their classes as they do on the field. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Walpole Board of Selectmen hereby recognizes and honors Barry Greener upon the occasion of his retirement as gridiron head coach of the Walpole Rebels, and we wish him only the best in his future endeavors.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the proclamation?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0-0. Very deserving.
Yes, there's also going to be a retirement party that is sponsored by the Gridiron. It's going to be Friday the 30th at Raphael's, and tickets are $10, $12 online. If you go to the Walpole Rebels football webpage, you could buy them online, or you could go to Southridge Farm on South Street, check out their nice new building, and go in and get your $10 ticket. We hope everyone can come.
Great. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing for the order of layout of Lavender Lane, Daylily Lane, and Red Gate Road.
So moved.
So moved. Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now open, and I'll turn it over to Maggie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct in assuming that all the members have the set of 3 maps that I handed out before, so I don't need to put the boards up there?
Yep.
Okay.
No.
The 3 streets are the remaining portions of the remaining streets from the Wisteria Ways 2 subdivision to be completed. They're portions of each street. The first portions had been approved and accepted in a previous phase. The planning board's the bond has been released, all the work has been satisfactorily inspected and concluded, and these streets are ready to be accepted as townways.
Is there anyone from the public that wants to talk about these? No?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
So, second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0.
I will make a motion to adopt the order of layout for Lavender Lane, Station 0 plus 26 plus minus 2, Station 6 plus 38.55 plus minus.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0.
I make a motion to sign the order of layout document and plan for Lavender Lane and to have it on file in the town clerk's office.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion to adopt the order of layout for Daylily Lane, Station 2 plus 60 plus minus to Station 8 plus 30.03 plus minus.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0.
I'll make a motion to sign the order of layout and document and plan for Daylily Lane and to have it on file in the town clerk's office.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0.
I'll make a motion to adopt the layout for Red Gate Road, Station 2 plus 70 plus minus to Station 6 plus 20.94 plus minus.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
500.
I'll make a motion to sign the order of layout for document and plan for Daylily Lane and to have it on file in the town clerk's office.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
500.
Thank you very much, and I will pick those up tomorrow as soon as they're ready, and take them, I'll take care of getting them to the town clerk's office with the requisite number of days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Do we
thanks,
need,
Mike.
so those are our plans? All right, so we need to sign those before we.
Okay.
Terrific. Public hearing is done. Okay, vote to appoint 3 candidates to the Taxation Aid Committee. Jim?
Yes, sure. What I'm handing out right now is just a little bit of background on the Taxation Aid Committee. Last time this committee met was in 2012, actually in March. This committee is made up of 3 residents at large, the finance director and the chairman of the Board of Assessors. And there's just about $50,000 in that account at this time. And that, one may ask, where did that money come from? And it came from, there's an envelope, I believe, in your tax bill, or it's in your tax bill, right? That you're able to check off and show whether or not you want to donate some money to needy residents here. There is a extensive list that the Taxation Aid Committee must go through to determine if there is the resident is in actually needs of funds, and that's more or less where we stand right now. I know you have multiple residents who are interested in the position, so take any questions, or if you'd like to start.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Why 3 members and not more?
it's just the way the selectmen set it up.
That's the way we set it up?
Town meeting set it up, yeah.
So if we had 5 dynamite candidates, we'd have to pick 3, or could we go to associate members? No, I'm just.
Not associates?
It's not in our rules and regs, it was adopted by town meeting, so it would have to be changed by town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I only bring it up because
We
when
hate
people
taxes.
want, right, when people are volunteering for committees, I hate saying no to anyone. And, you know, from the reading I've done, we have some outstanding candidates, and I hate saying no.
Maybe that's something we could amend in the fall, if you'd like.
Good idea.
I don't know, but I mean, an associate doesn't have a vote.
Right.
No, fair, I'm just throwing out
Yeah, I'm
alternatives.
saying that, they would be able to talk and have an associate.
Okay, great. So do we want to have each candidate come up?
Sure.
Okay, great. Who do we wanna- Okay, why don't we begin with Richard Zaccaro? Richard, come on up, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you could state your name and your address?
Sure, my name is Richard Zaccaro. It's 146 Common Street.
Terrific. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to
Sure.
serve the community
I
in this fashion.
trust that you received my resume.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, well, just to give you a quick background, I spent 15 years with state government, 15 years in the private sector, and 15 years in my own business. As a matter of fact, at one point in time, when I worked for a pension consulting firm, I had the pleasure of serving Norfolk County Retirement System. When I ended my career in state government, I ran the state pension fund. Then I went to the private sector, where I was a pension fund consultant with 3 different firms for 15 years. And I started my own third-party placement agency, where I represented money managers, pension funds. And then for the past 4 or 5 years, I had my own minority construction company, a small company. One of the reasons that I'm here tonight is I'm a senior myself. I can relate to people on limited income. I think it's a great concept you have here as well, to help people with tax relief assistance by private donations. If you look at the last page of my resume, you'll see some of the public experience I've had. I've been a Walpole resident now for going on 3 years. I live right up the street here and with my son-in-law and daughter. Beautiful old Victorian house, and we renovated a carriage house behind. Prior to that, I was in the city of one of your big rivalries in football, Brockton. Had some great games over the years. And I went to the Wharton School of Business, where I get a certified investment management analyst designation. I attended Suffolk University. I graduated in 1975, where I majored in economics. I attended University of Massachusetts Government School of Management course. And some of the positions I held in Brockton over the years, I was their pension fund consultant as well. I was a trust fund commissioner and chairman of the city of Brockton. I grew that fund from about $1.2 million to $6 million, where we diversified the fund's assets so we get a better rate of return. I was chairman of the cable advisory board for the mayor. We negotiated a contract with Comcast, where we were bringing in $23 million a year, and we got about $1.2 million back to public access. And then I was elected Plymouth County Charter Commissioner and Treasurer, which was an elected position for 2 years, where we studied the impact of charter government for Plymouth County. So I would love to get back into some sort of public service and help the elderly.
Terrific background, terrific.
Thank you. I also wrote a book on the investment business, if you ever want to get a copy of it. It's pretty
Will you
fascinating.
autograph it?
What's that?
Autograph it for us?
Sure. I'll give you a copy next time I see you.
Any questions for Mr. Zaccaro? Ann?
Sure. So, Mr. Zaccaro, as you know, this committee has been defunct for several years.
Right.
And there are policies and procedures in place, but it does look like, from looking at your career accomplishments, that you have a history of implementing policies, procedures, and controls of different systems. So I think it'd be great if you are selected to have someone to be able to take a fresh look. I think the whole board would be able to take a fresh look at
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
application and the policies and procedures and see if
Right.
anything needs to be revised.
I was also, what Ann's mentioning here is I was director of cash management for the state treasurer and internal controls and auditing. So I wrote a lot of the controls and auditing, and we implemented an automated cash management system where we saved the Commonwealth $200 million a year. The banks were holding on to deposits, and we got after them, and they were turning it over every day. So we really capitalized that and saved taxpayers a lot of money. But I'd be happy to review if I'm fortunate enough to get selected. I'd look at all the controls you have and come up with some new ideas, if
And
needed.
I don't want to assume you're going to say yes, but I'll assume you'll say yes. This account is funded by voluntary contributions.
Right.
As opposed to
Correct.
tax dollars.
Mhm.
And I think when people donate and make these contributions, it's with the expectation that the money will be, I don't say given out, but
Absolutely.
distributed. So I hope that whomever is selected, that they come in with this, with an eye of compassion, obviously consistency and parity, following the rules, but
Right.
with really the eye towards what
Right.
the entire point of this fund is. Because I think we've sat on it for far too long, unintentionally, but it's, I don't think it's money to be held close to the vest. I think it needs to be
Right.
judiciously, but
And the other area I could help you, the town treasurer, or whoever controls the funds, take a look at what they're investing the money in, make sure it's safe and getting your most bang for the buck on the dollars.
thank you.
And reconciliation, I was a supervisor of, when I worked with the Department of Public Welfare, and back then it was about a $12 million budget we had.
Nancy?
Just, how did you hear about it? Like, how did you find it, like, that the board was open?
I'm always watching for posts here in the town.
David?
You just have, well, I don't have any questions.
Yeah, and I'm good too. Thank you for coming in.
All right, well,
Tremendous
thank you
background.
for having confidence in me, select me as a finalist, and I look forward to your decision.
Terrific.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
See you now.
Mr. Teely?
Well, Mr. Teeley's coming up, can I have a quick question. How long has the money been accumulating without being dispersed?
They haven't dispersed any since 2012, because I went back and asked Marilyn, so pre-2012, and if you give me a bit, I can get a better answer.
Okay, so, one of my concerns is, do they have to disperse, when they meet next time, do they decide how much the total pot is to disperse? Or-
They have to first see if they have any applications. So they'd have to review each application separately and weigh in
People that
each
want
one on their merit. I don't know of any applications at this time.
Right, but like, so it says it shall be dispersed in an equitable manner. It really doesn't say what that, it doesn't mean they have to be equal, it just has to be equitable. And so, and would they be spending the whole 50,000 the first year? How, do they?
They don't have to.
So they first would decide what the total disbursement was, and then,
Yeah. It's laid out in the rules and regs, as Ann just pointed out to me.
Chapter 60,
Yeah.
Section 3D, the state actually has specific rules and regs that have to be followed. So there's not much, there's not much room for arbitrary
Right.
and capricious decisions. It looks like it's a pretty standardized, but that could be,
well, I'm just concerned that they spend the whole 50,000 this year, and then how much you're gonna get next year. You're gonna get, you know, the new contributions, you might not have enough to make it a dent in anybody's bill next year. So
So, I mean, I'll chime in. It sounds like it would be good once the committee's formed for them to get together, maybe come back and give us an update on what they plan to do and how they plan to do it. I understand your issue that if there's 50 now, but we only get a couple thousand every year, probably want to make it last a while so it can help people over a period of years. And it's also a restart committee, so they'll have to get the word out somehow that there is this possibility that people can apply
Right.
that need taxation aid, so. So it sounds like they've got a little bit of work to do once they get reformed, so.
Okay, great, welcome. State your name and your address for the record. and-
Mike Teeley, and it's 3 Butch Songman Circle.
Great. Your interest, Mr. Teal?
My interest is, I spent 40 years working and was very successful, enjoyed what I did, and so now I'm retired and I have free time and I'm giving it back. I do Meals on Wheels. I work with the DOD thing for veterans. I'm very involved with a lot of veterans affairs, town meeting, and that sort of thing. I didn't send my resume to you, I could if you wanted, but I'm just impressed with his, I would love to work on a team with him with that kind of background. And it sounds like this fund is unmanaged, unfocused, and kind of out there. And one of the things that I did in my career consistently was lead change, define organizational needs, and help solve organizational problems. That's what I was good at. I did it with major organizations, and I've been doing HR and leadership stuff my entire career. And so now I've just committed myself through the Meals on Wheels work and the stuff that I do with veterans, which, by the way, both of those populations in and of themselves and where they overlap and where they're independent are really an underserved community in this town. You talked about the VSO. The VSOs in other towns around Massachusetts do extraordinary things for veterans. And this is not a knock on John. I think it's a lack of focus for what the expectations are for him. The fact that you're talking about marrying his job up with someone in Medfield is an indication that he hasn't taken advantage of all the things that other VSOs do, and I'm involved with a lot of VSOs in Norwood and in Plymouth area, and so I see what they can do. They're underserved populations, and if there is a way to help support the people here, which when I deliver Meals on Wheels and I see some of the circumstances that some of these folks are dealing with, they are clearly underserved. They're clearly in need of support. And I don't know what equitable looks like, but I know that I can see need when you see people that during the summer and the hottest times are sitting on their porch trying to get cooler with a fan.
Right.
And when they're delivering meals to them, and you may be the only person they see. I know that some days when I go into a home, I'm the only person that person will see that day.
Right.
And so when we were doing the thing last year, it was disheartening to see that we didn't want to give money back to people in need, because there's a lot of people that are underserved here, and that's my only interest in this role, is that is some way to help these people get the help that's available in this community. Because it's a very giving community, it's a very supportive community, but there's also a significant population of underserved people.
Well said.
And that's my only reason, is that I had a good career. I don't need to work, and so if I can do stuff for my community, I've been here 30-some years now.
Right.
That's what I try and do, whether it's church or whether it's veterans or whether it's the elderly. That's what I'm trying to do.
I'll start with the questions only because, well, first of all, thank you. Second, I know you've been active in those organizations and as an RTM, and much appreciated by this board. Right after this vote, we're voting to appoint you to the Housing Partnership Committee, and I just want to make sure you have the time, should we vote for you to be on this committee as well.
Time is what I have.
No, but in all, I mean, it goes back to the way we opened this up, where we have a number of people wanting to serve on boards. This is a nice problem for us to have. It's usually the exact opposite.
Right.
So I just want to make sure as we debate, and that's a strong word for what we do, when we discuss that, should we go with you on this as well, there's the time and the passion for both.
Yeah, I've made a commitment to the community about 7 years ago, and I kind of stopped working for pay.
Yep.
So-
Okay, great. Ann?
Would it be improper, since Mr. Tilly is an applicant on both committees, would it be improper for me to ask him about the housing partnership?
Yeah, let's separate this if we could. That's okay.
By the way, it's her fault that I'm here.
Yeah, usually is her fault.
I think you stated your case very clearly, your compassion for an underserved population in town of veterans. So,
Thanks.
And I know, I happen to know your resume, so I know you do bring a lot of experience similar to Mr. Zaccaro in terms of implementing policies and things. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark?
No questions, thanks.
David?
No questions.
Yeah. Nancy?
All right.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for your time. Mr. Pellegrini? Welcome.
Thank you. Jim Pellegrini, 1451 Washington Street in Walpole. First of all, my background for the last 11 years, my wife and I are dedicated to taking care of the elderly, so we understand how underserviced they really are. And one of our main goals in our business is to try to keep the people home, because that's where they want to stay. And when I saw this, first of all, I want to thank Ann for bringing this to my attention. It's disheartening to see that for the last 3 or 4 years, we've raised over $50,000 of free money to help our elderly stay in their homes. So when I saw that, I said, I have to do that. That's what we do. And we see this every day, and how difficult it is for people on a fixed income that might used to live 10 or 15 years after retirement, now will live in 30 years or so, and it's becoming very stressful for them later on in their life. I'm also on the board of the executive board for HESCO Elder Services, and I work with them, and I've been working for them with about 7 years. And also, I'm on the Council on Aging board for 7 years, and I'm the treasurer for them. So I'd love to be able to help, and that's really all I have.
Great. Well, thank you for the service that you've been. I've been a big fan of yours for a while. Let me open up the questioning, Ann.
No, again, I keep hearing the compassion and the concern, and obviously, I think people who are interested in these seats would
Awesome,
have the
yeah.
compassion
Yep.
and concern for the poor and elderly and veterans and disabled.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mark?
Thanks, no questions. I know Jim through the Council on
Yeah.
Aging board, so.
Me too. I do have one question, and we discussed how small the committee is, of only 3 members.
I think it's a crime.
Do you think it would be a conflict if one of your clients were to be appearing before the board for a reduction?
I don't think so. First of all, I could excuse myself from voting on that specific one, but we are a completely private pay organization, so you'd have to be able to afford our services, so they would probably not be able to afford our services and be able to qualify for it. We don't have any state contracts. We gave them all up.
Okay, that's part of what I was
Okay.
looking at. Thank you. That clarifies that.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Kathy Hassenegger, please. Hi, sorry. Welcome.
Hi. Kathy Hassenegger, and I live at 23 Pinnacle Drive in East Walpole. And again, I volunteered to be on the committee. I've been in real estate for about 30 years in Walpole. Prior to that, I'm a counseling psychologist, a PhD from BC. I serve on the V&A board, and I still work. So I think the people, you know, are all well qualified. So I don't think people will take it personally, you know, whoever's not appointed that you talked about at the beginning. Because I think it's great that more people have volunteered than are vacancies open, because you don't always find that.
Right.
So
No,
that was,
absolutely.
there's a car left, I guess, but I was here when this building got approved on Common Street, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
So,
Just very briefly, hello. Kathy, I don't see you very often. The Walpole area V&A, so do you come in contact with a lot of individuals, or do you come in contact, do you have interaction with individuals in the community?
oh, not when you're on the board.
Okay.
It's strictly an advisory board that we meet to vote on, you know, policy and
Okay.
finance.
Thank you.
Mark?
Mm-hmm.
No questions? Hi, Kathy.
David?
I don't have any questions either.
Oh, well, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hodges, welcome.
Hi, my name's George Hodges, live 48 Endine Drive, Walpole. Lived here for 10 years. My background is developing real estate, also promoting concerts and things like that. I have a small record label. I do a lot of fundraisers through musical endeavors. I meet a lot of older folks. I've just turned 60 myself, so I guess I'm an older folk. And I do feel a lot of compassion for these people. I feel that they're very valuable in our society, and I've seen many of them suffering with a tax-paying situation, especially in Walpole. And I've talked with them extensively, a few of them, about the problem. And when I saw that there was a chance to perhaps help with that, I was all for it. I don't think old people should have to worry or suffer. I think that they've done their worrying and suffering, and it should be over. And I'd really like to help with that. And I believe I could be instrumental in raising more money through fundraisers, things like that. But that, you know, everybody seems to be very qualified, so.
Terrific. Ann?
I'm just curious, what kind of fundraisers, for what types of?
Well, there's a few that,
organizations?
for example, are coming up. We have one for a gentleman who's come down with bone cancer. It's going to be at the Workingmen's Hall in Norwood to raise money for his, just things like that. I have a band, and you know, we play whenever we can to make money for people, get the word out, you know, to help them out. But
Thank you.
No questions, thanks.
I did notice in your application, you also have experience in real estate.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I developed a lot of stuff and flipped a lot of things. Matter of fact, as Mr. Teely's, I don't have to work anymore. I work at Stop and Shop gas station in Walpole, just 4 hours,
the
6
time.
yeah, just so I stay out of trouble. And you know, but you know, this would be a great thing for me. It would fulfill a lot of things that I'd like to accomplish.
Right, no, and with time, and I'd say this to anyone, I mean, we have still a significant number of openings on a variety of boards, so, you know, that's why I'm, you know, I wish we could spread out all 5 across boards,
Sure.
because we don't get this number of people on an ongoing basis for everything, so, great. Nance? David?
No questions.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
thanks.
So how do you want to do this?
I have a suggestion. How about if each of us just gives our top 3 picks? We'll just keep a tally, and the highest vote will get the 3-year term, the next 2 year, then the 1 year, and if we have a tie, we could vote it out again, I guess, like for just that position.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
I'll start if.
Hold on.
So, hold on 1 second. There's potentially a question from the audience, Eric. Do you want to?
Oh, is there?
Take a
Oh,
question from
please,
the
come on
audience.
up. If you could state your name and your address.
Sure, Carrie Denizio, 37 Morningside Drive. I'm an RTM in Precinct 4. I'm just looking for some more information in general about the Taxation Aid Committee, because it was information's pretty hard to come by, and I think you got an impressive array of candidates, and I'm impressed that they found their way to applying, because the link, if you Google Taxation Aid Committee, it leads you to a dead link on the town website.
Oh, that's not good.
And it's also not listed on the town clerk's list of committees with current vacancies, nor is it in the boards of commission and commissions page. It's actually the only link or listing I could see was on the Board of Selectmen page, if you were interested in applying. So, so there's no place, doesn't seem to be right now a place to go to find out more about it. So I was wondering, since it's been defunct for 6 years, what was the impetus for bringing it back, and who initiated the reforming of the committee? Yeah, and how was it advertised?
Or you have 5 very good computer whizzes that found it. Would
Right.
you have, before I turn to our town administrator, and hopefully, Jim, you can add some insight, would you have applied for this?
I think it's difficult to say without knowing more about the scope of it, and
Fair.
that's a follow-up question I have too. Is the scope of the work? But I guess I'd love to know first
Jim,
why
can
it's
you
coming
answer that?
back.
Sure, I was gonna actually offer to give her the background information
Oh, yeah,
packet,
please.
but,
No, we can do
I
that
did
as
just
well.
look it up on the
Yeah.
town website. I pulled it up on the first site I clicked where it just said interested in serving on a town committee. Obviously, we gotta do a better job making sure it's focused. I'm gonna work with my IT director, so I apologize for that. And we'll make it more prominent on the website, and we'll do a review of all the committees, so.
And we have discussed, to that point, we are working with the cable, to get all of the boards out there more regularly, and that was a discussion we had at the last meeting, that when I first came to town, I know when you get that instead of having blank air on that cable station, there used to be slides that said, interested in zoning, you're interested in this, all of the different boards, who to contact. And so that's another way that going forward with all of the committee vacancies. And just back to Jim. So it's, the clerk's page is only elective offices, is that accurate or no?
I'm actually looking into boards and commissions.
The clerk does. There is a link to a page from the town clerk's website that has list of all town committees that currently have vacancies, and this particular committee, wasn't on it. So if you look closely at Board of Selectmen pages, you can find mention of it. I think it was brought up in a previous meeting, but it didn't appear in a couple of other places where we might have expected to see it listed.
So my question is, how did we get so many applications?
So,
I
go ahead.
put it, it's on the web, up in news. I had it
Okay.
up there.
Oh,
But once
okay.
I got 5 applications, I took it off.
Oh, you then took it off once
Right.
okay.
I mean, it sounds to me, just hearing from some of the candidates, that they had someone reach out to them personally, knowing their background and perhaps gauging their interests, which I think is valid. But if the pool is limited only to those people who have a personal connection or who are already on the radar of people who are aware of the committee, then you might not necessarily be getting everybody who would be interested.
That's a very valid point, and I'm actually embarrassed that our links go to defunct pages. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I can interject. A couple of months ago, or I think right around Christmas, when you had mentioned that this committee was defunct, and you gave me the paperwork to let's get it going again. So I did that. I sent out an email to hundreds of people that I've known. irregardless of their background. My assumption was that it was posted publicly, like all the other committees.
It was.
I assumed it was.
It was posted just with a deadline.
No,
Eh,
that wasn't me.
So,
That was
so,
nice.
so I
You
was,
advertised it,
That
but
was
the
actually-
connection to find out more about it was a
right,
deadline.
I took it upon
Right, and it's
myself,
not-
but I took it upon myself
Yeah.
to blast it out to the people I know.
So are you answering my question in terms of what's kind of reforming the committee? Is that it was essentially your initiative to kind of notice that this account was there, that this committee had previously been in place, and
Sadly, I was not aware of the committee until Cindy brought it up and said, this committee has been defunct for years. Let's see what we can do to get it going again. So, just as
Okay.
we
When we were.
discussed at our last meeting, all the
So-
other committees we were talking about as well.
Yeah, every year we look at the openings, and we kind of, then we'll discuss, what are we gonna do about openings, what are we gonna do about advertising, how long do you let somebody stay on a committee? Every year, the different boards, as they change, kind of discusses and talks about that sort of thing. And then at that point, Cindy will talk about openings and answer those questions and things like that. We talked about trying to advertise better and getting word out there to new people, and how do you like engage people that, you know, just not the same people that watch us at night, or, you know. So we did start talking about that, where it evolved after that. I mean, if one of us, I mean, I have to say, in the past, I've known somebody that I thought would be really good in the Trails Committee, and I gave them a call myself.
Yeah, I'm not concerned
yeah.
about that. I
No,
just
but
find
meaning,
it,
so,
yeah.
what's concerning is, is that we have like a dead end. You know, we advertised it, and then you are obviously someone who tried to look it up, and then there was nothing there.
Right.
So,
The genesis of this conversation was at our last meeting, when I actually asked the question, why are we just reappointing all of the people that are in their seats? And the reason is because despite the public notices in the newspaper, and I don't know where else it's posted, but despite, I mean, there were probably a dozen people. So that, I mean, and that was my concern. Why are we just reappointing the same people? Why is it not out there? But with the exception of the Taxation Aid Committee, which I don't know, there is very little response. So that's when we also discussed that it's incumbent upon us to come up with a mechanism. And one of the mechanisms that we discussed was which I am going to meet, you set up, I'm going to meet with the head of the library and possibly have a bulletin board or some kind of board there where things can be posted. Because we think many people go to the library, not as many people go to town hall.
Okay. So I don't want to belabor this point, but I'm looking to make sure that I have it correct. So there was an impromptu conversation between Ms. Regosta and Ms. Varub about the fact that this committee had existed and wasn't in existence currently, and maybe we would try to get it back up and running.
Correct.
Okay. And can you just tell me a little more about the scope of the committee's work? So it sounds like elderly residents could apply for tax relief. This committee would be responsible for reviewing the applications and determining whether or not they want to distribute funds. Is there anything else that you imagine? Oh, thanks.
This will give you the background. That's the background I provided to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, I'll take a look at this. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do appreciate you letting me ask my questions and getting
No,
some more
please,
information.
if you have more questions, don't stop.
No, I just wanted to know about the scope of the work. So I'll review Mr. Johnson's materials. Thank you for giving them to me. And again, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
So my suggestion is that we hold off on this, that we get IT to link this awesome packet onto the website so that people can look, and then maybe advertise this for 2 weeks.
You advertised it,
Not-
though.
But we didn't allow anyone, we may not even get another single applicant, and say to these applicants, please don't pull your application. Just hold on with us for a couple weeks.
How did you advertise, or how did you post it? What was the public notice?
I posted it on the left side on the Board of Selectmen's webpage. I list all the openings, and I also wrote a note in there for the reappointments. I told people if they were interested in applying for any of those, these appointments are expiring April 1, to please do so prior to a specific date.
In the taxation aid committee was part of that.
And then under news, up in the right-hand corner, I had that there listed as well.
In what was the start and end date of the taxation aid
I
committee
left it up
posting?
until I got
But,
my application.
and when did you,
So then it was
3 weeks, 4
probably- I took it
weeks?
down, like, probably last week, I took it down.
So about how many weeks was it up?
Oh, well, if it was since Christmas, I did it that following week, so it's been up there for a while, a couple
So
months.
we're talking about it being posted from Christmas to February?
Yeah,
End of
beginning
February?
March.
My thought is we just had someone who took time out to come in to say that they tried to look up the position and they couldn't. I'm just thinking that we put the information online, we give it 2 weeks, and then call them back. I mean, they don't even have to come back to talk to us again. We've got their application and we've seen them, but I'm just, if someone has taken time to
It's
come
still
all the
there?
way down to tell us that they couldn't get the information off our website, I think that we need to be able to give them some time to process to see if they want to apply.
Jim just clicked on, he just typed in taxation aid committee and it came right up to,
So two things came up. So it says interested in serving on a town committee. That came up under taxation. And then I typed in board vacancies dated January 25, 2018. It came up again under that one. And
I-
then Cindy just said she took it down under news, so.
I mean, I'm a big advocate, you,
I understand that. I think the problem is that she was trying to get information as to exactly what that committee does, and that was the dead link.
Yeah, but I don't know that
Could she have
every
called
board or
Cindy?
committee does have a link to something.
They don't. I don't
So-
know, right. you're-
Yeah, you know, listen, I listen, I usually agree in totality with you. However, on this, if we put it in the search engine and it comes up in 2 places and there's questions, there's other means to get information, and this has been a defunct
It's fine.
committee for 5 years, and now we have 5 candidates, and,
Press releases.
I mean, we can vote on whether to postpone it or not. Oh, please.
I'll just, maybe this will help you make a decision. I don't want my comments to be interpreted as a petition for you to change the process here. I was really looking to shed light on what that process was. It wasn't clear to me what this committee was, whether or not it existed, what the scope of its work was, and how anybody might go about applying for it. So I'm grateful for the information and the light that you've shed on the process, because I think the process of how people may be invited to serve or it's publicized to the wider public is important to keep in mind broadly, not just for this particular
No, I
committee,
couldn't
so.
agree more, number one. Number two, I'm glad you came in because obviously there's a glitch. How big of that glitch, I don't know. However, it's good to know, and I think going forward, we're gonna have to go through the exercise of, on any of the committees that we are seeking members, and making sure there's relevant information and the links work. So I appreciate you coming down. Mark?
Yeah, I would just say that I am comfortable voting on this today, and I think we have an imperfect process, but, you know, I have been out to the page, I did go look it up today, do you want to serve on a board or a committee? And there's 15, I think, boards or committees listed there, and this is one of them. And we went through something similar maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago with Housing Partnership, so oftentimes a board is defunct because nobody's on the committee, and then somebody starts talking, and all of a sudden, people get excited about being a part of that. We went through that a couple months ago, and that was probably an imperfect process there as well. And this obviously is one, but I think we've got the volunteers. I think it's a committee that would be great to get restarted, and I'm comfortable voting and moving ahead on this one. So I would like to maybe try to do better and clean up our links and get more info out there.
I couldn't agree more.
For the future, so. But, and for the folks at home, we still have a lot of open positions on some of these boards, so we are still looking for other people to fill them, so.
So I think too that, so many of our board positions end in April, and so the link to the town website that says these are coming up, this has been on since December. It's in the same category with the other ones, so I'm comfortable with that at least. We are going to take, as I said earlier, we are working with cable to get specific information out there about specific positions, and also encouraging people during that time period to look at the website and see what's available and opportunities to serve and donate their time. You know, and like I said, I don't know that not every board or commission has anything on the website that explains its role. Maybe that's something we should work towards for the future. And it's certainly not it's not something that you know, makes the process improper by not having those links. But so I thank you for alerting us of that, and we are going to be more cognizant of that in the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So let's vote this. And why don't we follow Selectman Gallivan's idea, and I'll start with you, Mr. Salvatore. Who are your three?
Okay. I'm not going to take Mr. Zaccaro because we can use him more aggressively somewhere else. Mr. Teely is getting appointed to another committee today, and is there multiple? Is there more?
No, there's not.
Mr. Pellegrin certainly in the industry and has no financial benefit, as I discussed. So I would be voting for Mr. Pellegrin, Ms. Hasenjager, and Mr. Hodges.
Terrific. Nancy?
I'm going to go with Zaccaro, Pellegrin, and Haseneg. The reason Mr. Teely is because we have another position in another committee that's open that I think would be a perfect fit, and I'm trying to be fair.
Mr. Gallivan?
I'd vote for Mr. Zaccaro, Mr. Pellegrini, and Kathy Hasenjager.
Ms. Regasta?
I vote for Mr. Zaccaro, Mrs. Hasenjager, Mr. Hodges, and again, for Mr. Teely will be hopefully appointed to another board. And although I think Mr. Pellegrini I think all of them would serve the boards wonderfully well. Mr. Pellegrini's also on a couple. He's on the HESCO Elder Services and the Treasurer Council on Aging. So I'm trying to spread the wealth.
Right.
That's a good one. Spread the wealth.
Well, there's no perfect decision, unfortunately.
And it's 5 terrific candidates. I don't have one bad thing to say about any of them, number one. Number two, I hope everybody fills other vacancies on boards. For this board, my votes are Mr. Zaccaro, Ms. Hasenjager, and Mr. Pellegrin. So I think it would be, if my math is right, Mr. Zaccaro, Mr. Pellegrini, and Ms. Hasenjager. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Kathy has 5.
Right.
Kathy Hasenjager,
Yes.
But I think so we need to know the order for terms, right? We're doing 3, 2, 1.
Those are even.
Who else? David.
So Pellegrini's out.
So what do we do there?
Just pick one for a 2-year term and one for a 3-year term.
Okay.
What are the terms? 2?
2-year and
2 and
1,
3.
I'm sorry, 2 and 1.
So Ms. Hasenjager gets 2 years,
No, she gets
3 years. And then, okay, if we then have to decide between Mr. Zaccaro and Mr. Pellegrini, David, who gets a 2 and who gets a 1?
I will give Mr. Pellegrini the 2, because I have other plans for Mr. Zaccaro. No, his qualifications
Zaccaro
first.
is 2 for me.
Zaccaro is 2?
Yes, just because Mr. Pellegrini already has other
Pellegrin?
committees.
Oh, that's
Okay.
true, too.
Mr. Gallivan
I'd go Mr. Pellegrini for 2.
and Mr. Zaccaro for 1. Ms. Regosta?
That's fine with me, right?
You do 2 or 1, pick.
What David said, he wants Mr. Zaccaro for 1.
Okay, and I'll support Ann and David's decision. So Mr. Pellegrini has 2 years, and Mr. Zaccaro has 1 year. Great, so now can we make the motions?
I will make a motion to appoint. I will make a motion to appoint Mr. Zaccaro to the Taxation Committee for 1-year term to expire on April 1st, 2019.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
500.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Pellegrin to the Taxation Committee for 2 years, term to expire April 1st, 2020.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
500.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mrs. Hassenegger to the Taxation Committee for a 3-year term to expire April 1st, 2021.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
500. Thank you, and please continue to volunteer.
I would ask the committee, once you've sort of organized and start to put a plan together, if you could schedule a very short meeting with Cindy. I'd love to hear how you're gonna roll it out and go forward, because we do want to try to publicize that, so, you know, at whatever point you're at that point, it would be great to see if you could come visit with us for, you know, a short period of time, not a long meeting or anything,
And in that
so we can help.
And in that same vein, if we can, I mean, I think, one, encourage more people to give money, and secondly is to figure out if there's $50,000 there, not to, at least
Don't give
hold
it
some
all
of
away in
it
the first
back.
year, yeah.
And figure out what we can do with the language in this, the regulation that I see is kind of iffy as to what you can do. So, if we have to ask legal counsel on that issue, or the
Can we do?
or the
Yes, we can.
state revenue department might have some guidance.
Terrific.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Ask you guidance on something. It goes back to fundraising, it has nothing to do with this taxation.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a fundraiser at the Workingmen's Hall in May, and we're rolling out a new song that I wrote. It's about substance abuse, opioid abuse.
Awesome.
What we wanna do is raise money to distribute Narcan to organizations that need it off of this song. Do you know what I mean? So, but we don't know who those are, who needs things like that. In Walpole or Norwood, I
Okay.
reached out to the police.
So two
chief.
things,
Yeah.
right? The Coalition for Alcohol and Drug, first of all, we should probably not be doing this here, but we will do it during open forum. But the Coalition for Alcohol and Drug Awareness would be 1. 2, both the police and the fire chief.
Yeah, I reached out to the
And
police
then
chief. He didn't
3,
get back to me, so.
get the information to Cindy, and we will think about it as a board.
Okay.
And Robin Chappelle, Board of Health is another area. But get the information to us.
Sure.
Give us a day to think about it, and then we'll have some ideas for you.
Cool.
And I appreciate the idea.
Oh, no problem,
Yeah,
thank you.
awesome.
Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Do you want to make a motion, right?
I'll make a motion to appoint
Michael Teal.
Michael Teely, Mr. Teely, to the Housing Partnership Committee for a 2-year term.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Ann?
Very briefly, Mr. Taylor, I'm assuming you can take your skill set with veterans and elderly and apply the philosophy to the housing partnership as far as people in need, and with an eye toward who the underserved population is in Walpole, you know, residents of Walpole. Thank you.
Great. Any questions, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
500, and Mr. Teely, welcome aboard.
And so to note, there is 1 more seat open on that committee, and it's a 1-year term,
Right.
if anyone is interested.
And a heartfelt thank you for your ongoing commitment to the town.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay. We're running really behind schedule, and I apologize to the superintendent of schools, but if it's okay with you, welcome, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
And I stand before you this evening on behalf of the Walpole School Committee and future middle school and high school students to request your support required of the Board of Selectmen in order to submit statements of interest through the grant applications process with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. School Building Authority distributes millions of dollars each year for proposed school building solutions. The genesis of the SOIs was initiated through a 2013 facility study of Walpole's 2 middle schools performed by CDR McGuire architectural firm. The report described existing conditions as deficient and/or obsolete when compared to modern code or functionality and inappropriate for 21st century education. 2 middle schools are at the end of their useful life. An explanation of the impact of the facility's shortcomings has been provided to you as well as to the school committee, and the explanation has been posted on our website for 2 years. So this is the 3rd year we're applying for the grant program. The school committee has voted unanimously in the affirmative to submit the statements of interest. As I said, a second vote is needed and required by the Board of Selectmen. The deadlines to submit statements of interest is April 6th, 2018, for consideration in December 2018. The statements of interest are simply the beginning of an arduous process of working with the School Building Authority to test the feasibility of many options. The statements of interest do not involve the investment of any dollars. The community and the state will study several options, including new construction, renovation, alternative land availability, additions, remodeling, or to simply do nothing. The minor changes this year to the statements of interest, when compared to the statements of interest the past 2 years, is we are changing the order of priority. The change of order of priority is due to a study that we conducted when we reviewed accepted projects by the School Building Authority. There were no projects accepted with buildings that were younger than 60 years. The second reason is the School Building Authority has not visited the 2 middle schools. They simply will only visit priority 1 of a statement of interest. So to that end, we are changing the priority to the Byrd Middle School number 1, Johnson Middle School number 2, the high school number 3. Again, we are not asking you to commit a solution or to commit finances this evening. There will be years of debate over configurations, enrollments, building construction versus renovation versus capital improvements, as well as land conversations. We are asking you to participate in a solution to the secondary school space needs and to have an open mind to the possibilities of creating educational facilities that meet the needs of future generations. In the end, it will be the will of the citizens that will prevail in Walpole, coupled with a buy-in from MSBA. We are simply asking for an opportunity to study more specifically the needs of these facilities. The scopes have been provided in your packets. I would indulge the committee just to read the Byrd Middle School scope because it seems to encapsulate all 3 projects. The scope of this project is to address educational and major structural deficiencies at Byrd Middle School. In 2013, the town of Walpole and the Walpole Public Schools contracted with McGuire Group to provide a comprehensive master planning study to address the facility needs of the school. The report also identified Johnson Middle School as having major deficiencies and recommended consolidating the 2 middle schools. Subsequently, in 2016, a secondary school space options study was conducted by DRA Associates to investigate the feasibility of converting the current high school to into a combined middle school and constructing a new high school. Due to the age and deterioration of the middle school buildings, both of these options are being explored to address the problem. This is an important sentence that I'm about to read. Each option has its pros and cons, and the plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option based on priorities, fiscal resources, and logistics. Byrd Middle School is the most efficient building in the school system and in need of the most immediate attention in areas including building conditions and educational sustainability. Built in 1961, the Byrd Middle School is near the end of its functional life, with structural and system deficiencies, a layout that does not support school safety and security, accessibility issues, programmatic requirements, and the 21st century learning. Byrd Middle School no longer supports the adequate delivery of educational and programming needs of the students in Walpole. We are looking for the support of the MSBA to provide a cost-effective approach that programmatically supports all students. So again, the main point is that each option has its pros and cons, and the plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option based on priorities, fiscal resources, and logistics. So I would request support for the three SOIs. We will submit them by April 6th. We will hear by December 15th. The next step would potentially be, if we're accepted into the grant program, a request for town meeting to approve funding for a feasibility study in May of 2019. The feasibility study and the conversations will take up to a year, and then we would be back to the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to put a debt exclusion question on a ballot for the entire community to vote on an option that is palatable to the school committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the community, at least prior to the vote.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And again, I apologize for the length of the meeting.
No worries.
I actually want to disagree with one thing, and then I'll
Okay.
open it up for questions. I think in your opening comments, you said you were asking us to participate in the solution for both space and education of our students going forward.
Mm-hmm.
The one correction, if you will,
Sure.
is I don't think this initial step is really us participating in anything.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I see very little downside, if any downside at all,
Right.
for having the statements released and putting in. It's not costing us anything. It's not impacting us in any way.
Correct.
And if we get what we want out of this, that's a positive thing. Am I misinterpreting anything here?
No, you're not. The participation would just be a positive vote, because if this board votes the statements of interest down tonight
Right.
and does not approve the submission of statements of interest to begin the process, it's dead in the water.
Understood. I just, I wish this
Right.
was a much more robust conversation.
Right.
But for me, and I'll open it up to my colleagues,
Right.
this is like a no-brainer, but that's one person's vote. Ann?
I disagree with you somewhat, so.
It's okay.
Dr. Lynch, this, as you said, is the first step in a road. And in my mind, and I think the facts, based on what you said, it's going to be a very expensive outlay regardless of the outcome. It's just a matter of degree, depending on what the study finds, whether it's new construction versus renovation.
Yes, school buildings are very expensive, unless the committee decides to do nothing with the existing buildings. But my responsibility is to provide the community with options. And the option may be, you may like new construction, someone else may like renovations. Some people may want to combine the middle schools, others may want to keep them separate. It really comes down to democracy.
I couldn't agree more, because I definitely think it comes out where the townspeople should vote on it.
Yes.
The decision on how to go forward. My concern with this is, as the other two SOIs that have been submitted,
Excuse me?
Was it two SOIs that have been submitted in the past?
3 statements of interest, 2 years ago, last year, so there've been 2 separate
3
years.
occasions.
Right. This school building authority requires us to separate the grant application into 3
Right.
SOIs because there's 3 buildings
Right, which is
involved.
not the best way, obviously, for our situation to propose something because it's all in a package, but that's just the way
They
it has to be
require us,
presented.
they box us into a corner to give a proposed solution, and that's what an architectural firm proposed because they felt it would affect the most children in the most expedient way.
Right. So that leads me to 2 points. So the really expected solution that the school committee was hoping for with the first 3 submissions, 2 submissions, was the new construction where a new high school would be built at the Bird Middle School site, a 5-story structure.
The school committee, yes, they received advice and counsel from a professional architectural firm who is experienced many, many decades in school construction. And they felt that that option, if required to identify an option through the statements of interest, it affected the most children, and it was they felt that it was the best solution. Yes.
So
doesn't mean it's the final solution.
Right. So again, I'll just go back to this is the first step in the road for a very expensive outlay for the taxpayer. If the taxpayer chooses to vote for a debt exclusion override on top of our what many think are high taxes. My concern, I have several concerns, but when we talk about the building obsolescence of Bird Middle School, 1961, yeah, I observe, you know, I look at a school like Blessed Sacrament, which is somewhat it's over 50 years old. That has been maintained. There doesn't seem to be any obsolescence there. I know it's an elementary school, but it's also, it is also a middle school. So the underlying premise that our buildings are obsolete in the solution, the desired solution that we're trying to horn in the state is for this construction of new buildings and combining the 2 middle schools into one facility. I don't think that that's the direction that should be brought before the taxpayer when it's possible that things could, the facilities could be renovated.
And I agree that you're right, and we're not bringing it before the taxpayer. We're asking the taxpayer to participate in a study that looks at, are they obsolescent? Maybe the taxpayer agrees with you. Should we be renovating? Possibly the taxpayers agree with that. Should there be new construction? The obsolescence is not my opinion. It's the opinion of 2 architectural firms that have studied both buildings, and that's their opinion. You have your opinion, other people's have, and I respect everyone's opinions, and this is maybe I could just refer back. Each option has its pros and cons. The plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option based on priorities, fiscal resources, you referred to that, and logistics. And logistics could be land, it could be traffic that'll have to be studied. So there's a lot of study that has to take place, and we're just asking for an opportunity to study that.
Right. And my opinion is that I'm very troubled by the fact that a 60-year-old building is in such dire need of repair and renovation. You know, and that begs the question: how did the town get here for those buildings? So until that question is answered, I also note that the direction in which this study is going is really to combine the middle schools, to take over a neighborhood on East Street that is not designed to handle, I think, a 5-story structure to be built on fields. And I also note that in Article 19 on the warrant, on our building improvements borrowing, there's infrastructure improvements, I guess, at OPR, which
That's
is
true. Elementary school.
An elementary school. So we're putting money into appropriately renovations for some of the buildings. Why have we not been doing that with these other buildings, so that we would not be here where we are today?
Well, there has been money put into the Bird Middle School. There's been roof replacements. There's been some window replacements. I anticipate having to use the buildings for possibly 3 to 5 years, even if this is a successful endeavor. So I think really it comes down to, was the money available for improvements? And again, this will all be studied, so we're not asking for money tonight. We're asking for a debate, a conversation, and a structure for making positive decisions for 50 years. I mean, these school buildings have to last another 50, 100 years. God knows how many years they'll have to last. But the 2 buildings that were identified in the McGuire group, similar to the police station being identified, the fire station, Council on Aging, these 2 middle schools were the next option recommended by C.D. McGuire in 2013. The school committee has sat back, and the town has handled the priorities of the police, the fire, senior citizens in the DPW building, and now it's time to study the school options. And it's not an option to do the school buildings study if we want to receive reimbursement. So if the feasibility study is $1 million, the school building authority will reimburse 40% of that. If we don't engage in the school building authority, the town would have to pay for the entire bill. But again, if the Board of Selectmen, if you convince your colleagues that you don't want to continue with the study and with a grant program, then I have done my work to advocate for students, to provide you with options, and to make the community aware that experts have told us that these buildings, in fact, need attention. So my conscience is clear.
Mark?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I was very disappointed last year when we weren't picked for the state program. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to work with experts in education and take a look at all 3 facilities and come up with ideas. I know there's always a great debate over whether you build new or you renovate, and having been in all the buildings, and I know some of the problems that Bird has, and I understand that once you start to renovate, when you go beyond some certain expenditure, then you have to bring it into code. I know the ceilings are low. It has lots of issues that it's unlikely to pass code without a huge amount of additional work. So, and that's where I'd really like the experts to weigh in and take a look at that. And I know that they will take a look at, new construction versus renovation. I think this is a great thing for the town. As we saw with the police station, the fire station, the Council on Aging, having done nothing on a police station or a fire station for 20 years, the cost of those buildings escalated dramatically. And while it will be a shocking number, whatever the number is for this solution, it's not going to get cheaper by waiting, another year or 5 or 10. So I think it is time to get on the list with the state, try to work our way up to the top of their list. I know they did come and talk to you last year. They sort of did maybe the first look at us.
Right.
And then we weren't on the list, but, obviously we were doing the right things that they even came to talk to us, even though we weren't selected. And hopefully we will be selected this year to start that process and really dig in. I think it's important to provide a good education to all the students in town. And, those buildings are deficient, I think, in many ways. Just an interesting side note, I went to high school in the Seattle area, and in this will tell you how old I am, in 1971, moved into a brand new high school in the Seattle area. It had just opened up, was a great high school. It was, there was no Starbucks at the time, sorry. They tore the high school down this summer.
Right.
Because it was the oldest school in that school system. And their comment was that buildings then were designed to be different than you need the buildings for now, you know, collaborative learning and high technology and all those kind of things. But it was just interesting to me that, you know, this Seattle area is booming and vibrant, and they take education very seriously. But, you know, at 40-some years old, that was the oldest school of any, high school, middle school, elementary school. And they did tear it down. So on one hand, it was kind of shocking to me that my high school was gone. It did drive home the point to me that, you know, we need to stay on top of the topic and really try to get this approved by the state so they can take a, you know, bring a team in and take a look at that. So thanks for all you're doing.
Dr. Lynch, thanks for coming in. You had read, I believe, were you reading from page 5 of the Byrd application?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that first paragraph, it says that both options are being explored to address this problem. What are the two options?
What sentence are you referring to?
What page are you on, David?
Page
Just so I
5
can-
of the Byrd document.
Do you have a paragraph for me?
The first paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 line down says, both due to the age and deterioration of the middle school buildings, both of these options are being explored to address the problem. I'm assuming the options are denoted above. I just wanted a clarification of what the two
I
options
was
are.
referring to the two middle schools, I believe.
Right, what are the two options?
Probably renovate or new. Now, I should be clear that during the feasibility, the construction of the feasibility RFP, the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, the finance committee can request as many options they'd like to study as they're willing to pay for.
I understand that, but that paragraph refers to two options, and where does the word renovation of, where is the option of renovation of Byrd Middle School? Where is that in this application? Or this
So the next sentence says each option has its pros and cons. Options, I guess, renovate and or new construction. The plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option based on priorities, fiscal resources, and logistics.
Where are the words renovate or new construction in that paragraph?
Do you have a point, Mr. Salvatore?
Well, no, he just said those words. I'm just wondering what the two options are. Did you have a
Renovate
is
or
there a
new
problem with
construction.
my question, Mr. Gallagher?
A little bit. You seem to be poking on the same point a few times.
No, well, he
Maybe you
just
could
read-
broaden it and, you know, ask a better question.
He just read the question, he just read it with the words renovation, and those words do not appear, at least in my copy of this document.
Well, I've said it several times as part of the public record.
I,
So,
Well,
do you
just
see
to jump in for a
renovation
second,
was
I
there?
think if earlier.
I guess it's implied.
It's referencing the other study, so I think the other study is where it outlines that what they were looking at was either renovating the building or building
Well,
construction. You know, where it says here, subsequently in 2016, a secondary school space option study was conducted by DRA Associates to investigate the feasibility. So I think that's where they address all those concerns and talk about what the options were.
Well, I certainly see that as one option, that combining the middle schools, but I don't see where the other option is renovating of the two middle schools. Again, what are the two separate options?
Construction or renovation. And as I said before, the Board of Selectmen can require as many options to be reviewed as you want to. We're not limited by this grant application. I'm not quite sure what the issue is. Yeah, if you refer to page 4, under the notes section, the following priorities have been included in the statement of interest. Number 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, ventilation, increase energy conservation, and decrease energy-related costs in the school facilities. Number 7 is checked, replacement and/or addition of obsolete buildings in order to provide for full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. So on page 4, you'll find a mention of renovation under number 5 explicitly.
Yeah, except, is number 1 checked off?
Excuse me?
Is number 1 checked off on your copy in that list?
No, number 2, 5, and 7 are checked off.
Okay, well, number 1 says replacement or renovation of a building which is structurally unsound or otherwise in a condition seriously jeopardizing health and safety. That's renovation of a building.
Well, I don't believe the building is structurally unsound.
Okay.
So
Number
why would I
5
check that?
Number 5 talks about systems.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't talk about
Well,
renovation.
the systems are within the building, right?
Okay. Well, I just think that paragraph 5 could be better written as to indicate that, and I hope this is what you're looking at, what the 2 options are. If one is, I am very much in favor of an option which says that you will renovate Bird or replace Bird and Johnson. That doesn't combine the two populations, which is certainly something that should be should be discussed.
So do you have suggested language you'd like us to include in the statements of interest?
Well, if you could identify the 2 options outright, repair and renovation of Bird Middle School, repair, renovation, or replacement of Bird Middle School, or option 2 being demolition of Bird Middle School and, moving the population to the high school. Is that a fair representation of what the 2 options should be?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. I don't believe we have to be that specific. I'm not quite sure. This is a statement of interest for a grant program, and they'll force us to study, as I've said numerous times publicly, all those types of options. So I'm not sure that this limits us. I don't believe it does.
Reading the word both options, so you're saying the 2 options are repairing the current building or combining the building?
No, I'm not saying anything. I'm saying you can study as many options as you can think of.
David, may I?
Well, just each option.
Would you like to change the word both? Would you like me to include the word potential renovation somewhere? And then I would have to have the school committee revote.
Well, I know people are taking offense
which
to
I'm
my
willing to do,
questioning, but
if
I'm
it'll
trying to
take a vote.
understand what both options are, and it's not clear in that paragraph.
Could I make a suggestion? Can we, in that paragraph, just strike the words both of these, and just go with options are being explored?
Sure.
And
Happy
just,
to.
I happen to like the vagueness of it
Okay.
at this stage, but
Okay.
if you limit to just 2 options, I can understand, it might be confusing, so
Okay.
just say, options are being explored, and I think that covers everything.
Sure.
If
So we
that's
would
what
strike the
they're
words,
exploring.
both of these in all 3 SOIs.
Right, just say options are being
Okay.
explored.
Let's make sure that those
If that's
3
okay,
words.
I don't wanna,
Well,
Yeah, we'd have
they're
to strike it
presenting this
from-
to us. I'm trying to understand what the word both refers to.
I think it's a valid point. If you're confused, then maybe MSBA will be confused, and we don't want to get this hung up for that.
I just
Simple
have a
reason.
brief question.
yeah, hold on, let David finish that, okay?
Okay. Now, C.D. McGuire is a engineering firm, is that correct?
Architecturally and engineering.
And have we had experts in the area of education besides yourself look at the issue of combining the middle school and what that means? I'm hearing often, and as something that keeps getting pointed to that this engineering firm has determined that consolidation is a good idea. But, you know,
Right.
why are we just basing our decision on what an engineer says? My
Well,
point
we
is,
haven't
I
made
don't
a
care-
decision, number one. Number two, their recommendation was based on financial information, not educational information. Number three, I've had numerous conversations and meetings with the 15 members of our leadership team, which includes over 100 years of educational experience, including many degrees, 4 doctoral degrees in education, many masters. So I've relied on our leadership team as far as the feasibility of combining middle schools. I've talked to colleagues, other superintendents. But again, if this community does not want to consolidate middle school, then that's their decision.
Can I just make a, David, could I make a quick comment?
I
If you
just
don't
said-
mind.
Go ahead.
No, I would just say I would be in support, you know, if we can get the state to come in and do the study. I'm very open to your idea of studying all the options and being more specific at that time. I just want to say that. I'm not against that whole concept.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I would rather see 2 middle schools. And I would rather see 2 middle schools, even if it's more expensive, irregardless of what C.E. McGuire says. So that's where I'm at. And I wish that the application presented that option in a more clear and open way so that the residents of Walpole can make that decision. I said it before, and I'll take this opportunity to say it again. One of the things I've always felt that it was a strong part of the educational system here in Walpole was the way that the four elementary schools feed into the 2 middle schools that feed into the 2 high schools. I think that, 1 high school. I think that system is the best anti-bullying system you can ever have. And I strongly feel that those young kids that come out of Fisher and, go into the middle school with their colleagues from Elm and, have that strong bond with their Fisher kids and create a bond with their Elm Street kids, when they move to the high school, those Johnson kids stick together and help each other through it. And I also feel that when, I've had 3 go through the middle schools, and I won't pick on them, but for one of them, walking into a middle school environment of approximately 1,000 students if they were combined, was it
Yes, sir.
98? Compared to, so for one of them, no problem. For the other 2, it would have been an issue. And just as a parent looking at, and the high school has about 1,200 students.
I would remind you, Mr. Salvador, we're not here to make that decision this evening, and you'll have many years to make your point.
I'm going to finish my point. So having my 6th grader walking into an environment almost the size of the high school, 1,000 versus 1,200, I think that is problematic. And so I would prefer if these addressed that as a specific option, not just the combined system. I appreciate the fact that you've changed the order of priority, and I think that's an important aspect to this. And I think the order of priority is exactly right under the circumstances. I think Bird does need to be seriously looked at, and we need to do it yesterday. So that's I wish that the SOI presented that as a key component, and I'll leave it to my colleagues.
I was almost.
May I address that for 1 minute,
Yeah,
Mr.
please.
Chairman? I need to make it clear that I do not have the authority to submit these as a superintendent of schools. I go through my governing body, which is the elected school committee, and they have chosen that they believe in governing the schools that would be the, if required to submit an option, which we were required to by the school building, based on not only the McGuire report, but DRA Associates, led by President Carl Flansburgh, that was their recommendation. The school committee chose that, and they voted the first year 6-1 in favor of the SOIs, the second year 6-1, and this past year 7-0 to support what is in these SOIs. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm up here trying to dictate what happens to the schools. No decisions have been made. There are many decisions to be made and to be discussed, much research to be vetted. So I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for a solution. I'm asking for the opportunity to study a solution.
Thank you for the clarity. Ms. Ragosna?
Thank you. I don't support this SOI because of the language on page 5A, which, to Dr. Lynch's point, they had to pick and submit an option, a primary option, where it's almost being pigeonholed to favor the option of new construction. So while philosophically I am not opposed to the idea of a study and getting grant money for the study, I think that this SOI submission, much like the prior two submissions, are focused with an eye towards the new construction of a high school and combining the middle schools. So as it is written, I just cannot support this.
You all set? Okay, can we have a motion then?
I'll make a motion for the SOI for Byrd Middle School, Eleanor Johnson, and Walpole High School.
I'll second that.
Excuse me, Mr.
Oh, we
Chairman.
have to read it?
Yeah.
Yes, you have to indulge me on that.
Oh.
MSBA is very heavy on bureaucratic red tape, and they're requiring.
Are you up for it?
I guess so.
Want my glasses?
Change your vote so you don't have to read it.
Maybe.
You
All right.
want to leave in?
You can take turns on each one.
Oh, sheesh. All right. I'll make a motion for the SOI for Byrd Middle School, Eleanor Johnson Middle School, and Walpole High School. Byrd Middle
amended.
School. Resolved, having convened an open meeting on March 20th, 2018, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Board of Selectmen of Walpole, in accordance with its charter bylaws, in accordance and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority a statement of interest form for the Byrd Middle School at 625 Washington Street, Walpole, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The scope of this project is to address the education and major structural deficiencies at Byrd Middle School. In 2013, the town of Walpole and the Walpole Public Schools contracted with the McGuire Group to provide a comprehensive master planning study to address the facility needs of the school. I won't read in there that I was chair of that committee.
Oh, Jesus, it's always about you.
This report is also identified Johnson Middle School as having major deficiencies and recommended consolidating the two middle schools. Subsequently, in 2016, the secondary school space option study was conducted by DRA Associates to investigate the feasibility of converting the current Walpole High School into a combined middle school and constructing a new high school. Due to the age and deterioration of the middle school buildings, both of these options are being explored to address the problem. Each option has its pros and cons, and the plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option based on priorities, fiscal resources, and logistics. Byrd Middle School is the most deficient building in the school system and is in need of the most immediate attention in areas including building conditions and educational substantiability. Built in 1961, Byrd Middle School is near the end of its functional life, with structural and system deficiencies, a layout that does not support school safety, security, accessibility issues, programmatic requirements for the 21st century. Byrd Middle School no longer supports the adequate delivery of education and programming needs to the students in Walpole. We are looking for the support of the MSBA to provide a cost-effective option that programmatically, did I say that right?
Yeah.
Supports the students.
Programmatically.
The board acknowledges receipts of complete copies of the SOFs provided by the school administration for projects at Walpole High School, Byrd Middle School, and Eleanor Johnson Middle School, and has had full knowledge that we were voting on details. Specifically, we received priorities 2, 5, and 7. The board hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of an application. The awarding of a grant or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority or commits the Walpole School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
I second that.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that we mention that the SOI as amended,
Oh, with the one
Right.
change?
right, with the
Okay.
3 words stricken,
Yep.
both of these.
So moved.
Thank you.
So do I read the next one?
No,
We need
can
a
we
vote.
discuss this one?
Yeah.
So, if you look at paragraph 2 of the motion, the sentence just prior to, it says, it mirrors the language on the
Correct.
first paragraph of page 5. It says, due to the age and deterioration of the middle school buildings, both of these options are being explored to address the problem.
Right.
The sentence just prior to that states, subsequently to 2016, the secondary school space options study was conducted by DRA Associates to investigate the feasibility of converting the current Walpole High School into a combined middle school and constructing a new high school. And then, so I think from, I kind of read for a living. And what I see as kind of what that states is the 2 options are, 1, the high school into a combined middle school, and 2, constructing a new high school. It's referencing the sentence just prior to it. It does not, again, we do not have an application that, fully suggests the option of keeping the middle school separated and renovated. And I know what you're gonna tell me. This is preliminary and it doesn't matter. But to me, that language matters, and I will be voting against this motion.
Okay. Any more discussion?
We would need to strike those 3 words in the
Yes.
original motion.
Right. And that's duly noted, correct? So we have a motion and a second
You're striking the words from the SOI?
And the motion.
in the motion. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Votes 3-2. Thank you, Dr. Lynch. and-
Well, you gotta read the others.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Nancy's only 1/3 done. I'd be happy to read one if you
Yeah,
want,
please,
Nancy.
Mark.
What?
Go ahead, please.
I'll make a motion. Johnson Middle School SOI resolved, having convened in an open meeting on March 20th, 2018, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Board of Selectmen of Walpole, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form from the Johnson Middle School located at 111 Robbins Road, Walpole, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The scope of this project is to address the educational deficiencies at the Eleanor and Johnson Middle School. In 2013, the town of Walpole and the Walpole Public Schools contracted the McGuire Group to provide a comprehensive master planning study to address the facility needs of the school. This report also identified Johnson Middle School and Byrd Middle School as having major deficiencies and recommend consolidating the middle schools, the 2 middle schools. Subsequently, in 2016, a secondary school space study option was conducted by DRA Associates to investigate the feasibility of converting the current Walpole High School into a combined middle school and constructing a new high school. Due to the age and deterioration of the middle school buildings. So what do I do here?
Just
Get rid of
don't read the next 3 words.
Just, okay. Buildings,
These
options. These options are being explored to address the problem. Each option has its pros and cons, and the plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option on all priorities, fiscal resources, and logistics. Along with Berg Middle School, Johnson Middle School is a deficient building in the school system and is in need of immediate attention in multiple areas to ensure educational sustainability. Built in 1966, Eleanor N. Johnson Middle School is near the end of its functional life. So sad when you read it that way. Its structural and system deficiencies, a layout that does not support programming requirements and 21st century learning, student safety concerns, and accessibility issues. In addition to Bird Middle School, Johnson Middle School no longer supports the adequate delivery of education and programming needs to the students in Walpole. We're looking for support of the MSBA to provide cost-effective option that programmatically supports the students. The board acknowledges receipt of complete copies of the SOIs provided by the school administration for projects at Walpole High School, Berg Middle School, Eleanor Johnson Middle School, and had full knowledge that we were voting on details specifically received in priorities 2, 5, and 7. The board hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Walpole School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second?
Discussion?
Inquire about, is there any requirement that there be a specific order of the approval of these, or is it they 2 separate approvals by the school committee and by the Board of Selectmen?
The requirement is that each SOI must be voted on separately.
But there's no requirement that the Board of Selectmen do it subsequently to the school committee, or that
As
one
far as
has
the
to come-
priority order,
No, that the SOI approval, are we allowed to approve something that the school committee has yet to approve?
I suppose you could, and we just have to see where we go with that. I'll need advice and counsel from MSBA.
Yeah, because so my concern is that because you suggested a verbal amendment to the original SOI, if the school committee has to vote first on that.
Oh, no. No, as long as I have 2 votes, it doesn't matter the order. I understand your question now.
Okay.
I apologize, I didn't follow you at first.
Yeah. And again, I have the same objection to the language in this SOI. Bird and Johnson, I would be happy to vote favorably for a document that indicates that there will be a full discussion and of whether or not to consolidate. And again, I feel that the language of the document only provides one set of options to SOI, in the SOI, which is the combining of the middle schools and the high school. And I'm not happy with the language that fully presents this other option to the Mass School Buildings Authority.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
3-2. We'll go to the third
Walpole
SOI.
High School SOI resolved having convened in an open meeting on March 20th, 2018, prior to the SOI submission closing date. The Board of Selectmen of Walpole, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form for the Walpole High School located at 275 Common Street, Walpole, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The scope of this project is to address the educational and major structural deficiencies at both Byrd Middle School and Johnson Middle School. In 2013, the town of Walpole and the Walpole Public Schools contracted with the McGuire Group to provide a comprehensive master planning study to address the facility needs of the school. This report also identified the two middle schools as having major deficiencies and recommended consolidating them. Subsequently, in 2016, a secondary school space option study was conducted by DRA Associates to investigate the feasibility of converting the current Walpole High School into a combined middle school and constructing a new high school. This option was prompted by increasing space concerns to provide adequate educational programs at the high school. Due to the age and deterioration of the middle school buildings, along with the space issues at the high school, both of these options
Excuse
are
me, we
being
need to strike
explored.
those 3 words?
Yeah.
Both of these?
Both of these,
Are not part of the motion.
Wait, where is that?
You're not a good
Space
example of
issues
Walpole education.
At the school. Get rid of both. These options are being explored to address our secondary school deficiencies. Each option has its pros and cons, and the plan is intended to provide a structure for further discussion by the Walpole community in order to determine the best option based on priorities, fiscal resources, and logistics. We are looking for the support of the MSBA to provide a cost-effective option that programmatically supports the students. The board acknowledges receipt of a complete copies of the SOIs provided by the school administration for projects at Walpole High School, Byrd Middle School, and Eleanor Johnson Middle School, and had full knowledge that we were voting on the details. Specifically, we received priorities 2, 5, and 7. The board hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Walpole School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
It's interesting that in the motion and in the similar paragraph on at page 5, both talk about the middle schools having major deficiencies, do not say the same about the high school, but rather just say that the high school has space issues. So the new high school is really a solution for the middle school problem. And again, I think we should just address the middle school problem and fully be looking at not combining them. And again, I would be voting against this statement of interest.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
3-2.
Thank you very much.
And with that, thank you for coming in.
Appreciate your time and tolerance.
We are running super late. Is there anybody here for open forum? Mr. Chekanowski? Thank you.
Good evening. Philip Zakarowski, 90 Pemberton Street. I'm here tonight representing the No Walpole Gas Pipeline Group, and we just wanted to invite you, the Board of Selectmen, to a meeting. We're meeting with Seth Pickering. He's the coordinator, Southeast State Coordinator for the Green Communities Act, and we're very interested in seeing whether Walpole should pursue that, so we've arranged a meeting with him, informational, and we'd just like to invite you, the Board of Selectmen, if you'd like to attend. The meeting's going to be on Monday, April 9th at 7 p.m. It'll be at the Walpole Library in the Children's Program Room.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah.
Can I just
Cindy?
inquire what it is?
We can't even talk about it.
Cindy, can you send out reminders and maybe get some information to email?
Or
us
Phil,
with it?
yeah, I mean, if you want.
I can send you an email Yeah, and with the
Could you
information.
state the time again? The
You
time
said
and location? Monday the 9th?
Monday, April 9th.
What time?
7 PM.
Children's room?
Children's program room.
In the name of the committee or group?
So the group is the No Walpole Gas Pipeline Group.
The what?
No Walpole
No
Gas
Walpole,
Pipeline.
okay.
So we were the
Thank you.
group that worked on the
Yeah.
the article
No
resolution
pipeline.
for. So just to let you know,
thought he
we're
said
now
no
working
Walpole.
more on positive things,
Yep.
on conservation and
Terrific.
renewable energy.
We'll see you
So
then.
the issue, Phil, is that when something comes up at open forum,
We
due
can't
to
comment
the
on
open
it.
meeting law, we're not allowed to have a discussion. So if you could forward that info to Cindy.
I would do
will-
that. We just wanted to let you know about the
No,
meeting.
that'd be
Terrific.
great.
I'm glad you came in. I'm sorry we didn't
And the
get you right at
public-
8.
Is the public invited also?
We didn't invite the public because we have such a small room.
No, I'm just,
I don't
not the
even go there.
subject. I don't want people
Listen.
to show up.
Logistics only.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Thank
He
you,
doesn't
sir.
want them.
I might want people there.
Let's keep going. Phil has another
Please.
item on the agenda.
Skip to that.
Yeah, out of order.
Yes, why don't we skip to that?
Motion, sure.
Are you doing the consent? No,
this
because
is
it's
on
not there.
consent, but-
Yep. Okay, so why don't we go to the reappointments to committees? No.
For subsection 1, request to use count comment for peace vigil. Is that what you?
Vigil? Peace vigil?
Oh, let's go to the peace vigil. So it is the consent agenda. So why don't we do all the consent agenda items, David, voted all as one?
Did you want to speak on his issue?
Did we
No,
want to
we're
speak
just
on
gonna-
it, or? we're-
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. This is the consent agenda. We vote these all as one item. If anybody wants to take it off the agenda, just say so, and we will vote the remaining items as one item. But I move that we approve the following items. A request to use the town common for a peace vigil on April 14, 2018, and close Elm Street between Main Street and West Street. Number 2, a request to hold the Walpole Little League Parade on April 22nd, 2018, starting at 11:30. And number 3, gift acceptances for the Council on Aging with thanks from all of us and the council, from Eugene Riley, the Italian-American Ladies, George and Estelle Parks, and the Friends of the Walpole Public Library.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I do have a question on the peace vigil.
Yes.
Do we typically, for events like this, close off a street?
Yeah, we do. As a matter of fact, we did a candlelight vigil 3 weeks ago, David, and we closed down the same street, so.
Okay, and this does not require, it doesn't look like it requires, or it wasn't addressed in the PD write-up, that it requires any police detail or anything.
That's the one-way road.
Well,
No,
I'm talking
but
about for the
it's
event,
talking
broader
broader,
for the event
yeah.
itself. I mean, one would think if it's a peace vigil, that would not be
Can we,
required. And I,
to that point, can we check with,
I will check, but it was actually the
I
advice of
don't-
the police to close.
no, but to have a detail at the vigil?
but at whose expense?
They may be saying by closing the road, they don't need a detail.
Understood. I'm only pointing, just pointing out if it has been discussed by, or even considered by the PD, if a police detail is needed, if they've discussed with the organizers, again, a peace vigil by its very name sounds like it should not offer any problems, but I think when's it scheduled for?
April 14th.
April 14th.
I will say, and I know when they did close the roads, I believe when they're closing the roads, there are going to be policemen stationed at where the road's closed. So while they may not actually be at the vigil, they may be in the proximity of the closed road, or at least that is what I've seen in the past when we close those roads.
And I can verify with the police chief. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
If
There's a
these
cost
officers aren't on
associated,
duty,
right. No, I agree wholeheartedly.
Right, much like the road race, I
Right.
had the same question.
Right.
If there are going to be officers present, are they going, the town, it's not overtime or
Right.
an
It's a very
additional
fair
duty?
point.
just to
So let's
confirm
just
that,
verify
to make
that.
sure.
Also, I mean, there is a little bit different than a road race because they have the right to assemble.
Yeah,
And
but-
they just have to
Right.
give notice.
Right.
So it's not that they could or couldn't decide or make someone responsible for paying. It's something the town just has to absorb no matter what. Because they have the right to assemble and notice. And so it's not like a road race and they're a nonprofit and, or, you know,
No,
somebody else.
I am fully
Yeah.
cognizant of the right to peaceably
Right.
assemble. My concern, if something untoward happens, then obviously that's on the town to provide police
Protection.
presence. I'm talking about proactively, does the chief feel that there is a need to provide that? And if he doesn't, I
Yeah.
think
So-
that's fine.
Could we just check?
But
And if
it
there's
would not
a
be on
cost
us.
associated or any other change to this, please let us know.
You bet.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a vote in a second with one amendment of checking with the police department. All in favor of the consent agenda items?
Aye.
Aye.
500. Terrific.
You're
Let's
all
go.
set.
Thank you. Good luck with both. The MBT bus stop, we have a motion to approve the replacement location of the bus stop from 145 Elm Street to proposal number 2 at 58 Front Street. Jim, is there anything more to this?
No, I believe it's identified.
Yeah, it's in the
which is in your
packet.
packets.
Yep. Yep.
Police department's met with me, they're comfortable with it. So is town engineering, the DPW.
So wait, they're comfortable with the one losing the spaces?
The one on Front Street, because we are not losing any spaces
Not
there.
losing, okay, all right. But originally they wanted the other one.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. We're not doing that.
David, question?
So, so we're not looking at Elm Street anymore, or?
No, it's just gonna be on Front Street, right near Red Cherry there.
And who has looked at this previously? That-
Myself, the Chief Carmichael designated to the traffic officer, John White, Sergeant White, Maggie, and Assistant Town Engineer Chris Johnson, along with DPW Director Bob Brand.
I don't have any problem with that. I would just suggest is that we look at that area as far as lighting a little better, on that, being that, and vegetation. I would just be concerned that that is a quieter street, that you're waiting out, if you're waiting out there in the evening, that it
Off the
just be a.
beaten path.
It
Yeah,
just
a
be
little
a, that it's be as bright as possible, and if any vegetation needs to be moved,
Cut back.
just so that, so it's a wide open view of that area from a longer space. That was my only, so I felt there were advantages to
Yeah.
Elm in that sense, is that it was busier and that it was, but you lose parking
Right.
spaces.
Right.
And it's probably harder to get in and out of and might affect the traffic at Elm and West, so.
No, it's
I-
fair, very
I
fair
mean,
point.
East. And then the other place has that advantage, and
Yep.
so, just so we can look out for those issues.
Sure.
I'm a little confused, though.
Go ahead.
Because it seems like we're actually, are we voting to incorporate both locations? That 58 Front Street will be the bus layover only, so it's not a stop. It's the location where the bus will sit for a while, in that the 145 Elm Street is going to be the bus stop. Am I reading this cover page?
No, I don't
The
think,
proposed bus stop is
Right.
just as identified on this last page, Ian, on this right here, right at Front Street, right after the church.
right.
So the bus stop and the layover location are in the same?
So there is no layover.
There's no, they
Or
need,
they
no,
park
they
there?
need a place to lay over. That's one of the,
Stipulation.
yes, so it's two issues. Bus stop, layover spot. And it looks to me like their solution is, because you cannot have the layover spot on Elm Street because of, it would take up parking spaces, that they're taking a little piece of both streets, or am I misreading this?
Yeah, I read it just, but go ahead.
Go
No,
ahead.
please.
The only spot, we specifically said to them, we know how sensitive everyone is with parking downtown. We are not willing to sacrifice parking downtown. So the The only spot we talked about is Front Street, and that's all they're receiving approval for.
So Front Street will be for the layover space
Yeah,
and
I-
the bus stop,
Yeah.
because, and will that layover space,
It
the
says
layover
if
space,
you-
will that take up any parking?
No, because it's
No,
on the other
because it's
side
on
of the
right
road
here.
of the one-way.
She needed two
Yeah.
spaces here,
Yeah.
basically. The truck's gonna, I believe they're on 15-minute break, and then when they're off their break, they pull up to the bus stop right there,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Okay, and it doesn't impede traffic, it doesn't?
No, we
it's a-
measured
it's a-
it with that day out there with her, how long it's exactly the amount of space she needs.
Okay, and the MBTA is taking care of all the costs associated with it, including our requirements for brighter lighting and taking that,
Yes, the MBTA will absorb any cost. As far as the brush, I have to check and see if that's on town land, because I know Red Cherry owns right there, and I believe the church owns right there. Any space that's town-owned land, we can address, so yes.
Oh, is it gonna be on the other side of the street? Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Oh, it's pretty clear there.
No, but it's still.
Well,
you have
I
a
want to
good
leave it
point,
open though,
yeah.
David, you know?
Some lighting might be appropriate, just
I'm
because that
map
tree is gonna
challenged.
That's
make
okay.
it dark.
Yeah.
That's okay. You raise good questions, so who cares, you know? Okay, so we have a motion, we
I'll
have a
make a
second.
motion.
No, we already did.
Who made the motion?
You seconded it.
No,
So-
you didn't.
I don't think so.
Did we
No,
not?
there's no
Yeah,
motion.
pre-
Okay.
I'll
Sorry.
make a motion that we approve proposal 2, which is a bus stop adjacent to 58 Front Street, which will include a bus layover sign at 58 Front Street.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
500. I'll make a motion to approve the one-day alcohol license for the Knights of Columbus on April 7th, 2018.
I'll second that.
All the paperwork is in order? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500. I'll make a motion to approve a one-day alcohol license for the North Walpole Fishing Game Club on April 28th, 2018.
I'll second that.
Paperwork in order? All in favor?
Aye.
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 500. Okay, reappointments to committees. There was one change to this, correct?
That's correct, just, hold on, I mean, his name is on here, but, Louis Hager called me around 3:30 this afternoon and said that, he does wish to be reappointed to the ad hoc committee.
Okay, so I will make a motion to reappoint committee board members as shown on the attached document 3-30, with the correction, clerical correction that Louis Hagler has requested to stay on as a regular member.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500. And we will go to the town administrator's report.
Sure,
Jim?
just a few items tonight. Facilities updates attached, you will find a detailed executive summary from Compass, the monthly closeout for each of the 3 projects that they're overseeing. I'm pleased to report that the police and fire station are progressing well. Police are expected to move into the new police station in early April. The fire.
April 3rd, right?
On or about April 3rd. Still a couple, the stairs out front are presenting a bit of a challenge because of the weather, so it could be pushed back a week.
Well, it's spring. I'm sure we're not gonna get snow tomorrow or anything like that.
Well,
Something like a foot. So,
No, we should be, actually, because we've been advertising, we've got to be careful there. I mean, we've let the whole public know that they're moving.
yep,
So-
we're very mindful of it. I
Yeah,
actually
we need
spoke to the chief and the deputy about this earlier this evening, so we're
We need
all
to
very
s-
mindful of that.
Yeah.
Fire department is set to move in the May-June timeframe. That's progressing well, but again, everything is kind of up on the weather here, so. COA is also progressing well within the footprint. On the site, they haven't been able to do much because of the snow and the snow that's been piled up, but if you drive by South Street today, you'll see that the 3rd level where the attic and HVAC systems is going to be is actually getting put on there now. So Compass is doing a great job overseeing all these projects along with the Permanent Building Committee. Finance Committee, the committee continues to meet regularly on Monday and Thursday nights. I expect that they'll be finished most of the recommendations by early April. They are mindful that the deadline to get their recommendations into the town meeting warrant is just about April 2nd, and we're going forward with that. They are going to be meeting with our First Southwest and our OPEB actuarial firm on April 5th. You're more than welcome to come in just to meet our financial advisors, talk about OPEB. That'd be nice to have some of the members there, along with members of the public. Parking update.
I'm sorry, what was the date?
Thursday, April 3rd.
5th?
I'm sorry, 5th, yes, you are correct. And then the 2nd, April 2nd is their deadline to get in the booklet. Parking, a few weeks ago when the weather was nicer, I noticed a bunch of cars parking across the pool, which is nice to see them taking advantage of that. As we progress closer to the summer, I expect that parking lot to get a little bit crowded. An idea that your board may want to consider is come mid to end of June through July and August, maybe opening up the Robbins Road parking lot there across where all the teachers park. It's a lot closer, it's not being used in the summer, just some food for thought.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
No, that's a really good idea, because the pool parking is gonna
Yeah.
become a problem, so when the pool's open, the school's closed.
And
Good job, Jim.
Thank you. And as we get closer to seeing the fire station, the temp ops come down, I plan on giving your board a proposal, asking for approval to basically open that lot up to 30 spaces there. And the town engineering department tells me there's not much changes we'll have to do there. We will have to, there's some slopage issues and some drainage issues just because the way the lot was set. We may have to put up some guardrail there, but we will get a credit back for the building because they were required to take it up and put new soil down. So I'm going to present your board with a plan the next couple of weeks for that.
Yeah, I'd like us to be mindful that I don't know that we need a long-term solution, especially if Gillette happens, that, remember, we like green space.
I agree. I think I would prefer at some point to bring it back to the grass and bring the cannons back with better bases on them than those concrete blocks that were on it, and restore that at some point. So if there's a way to take that money that comes back and put it aside for that purpose, that would be a nice, I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah. Let me come up with a proposal where, I understand what you're saying, maybe not invest a whole lot of money, maybe address a short-term solution there, and then in the future, maybe 2, 3 years, 5 years.
And that money that's already been earmarked for the removal and resodding be kept for that purpose, but instead of them doing it, that we do it at some later time.
Okay. Sure. Last item that's not on my list here, the TIP, Transportation Improvement Program for Main Street Route 1A, all the way down from just about Watson's on down to the Norwood line. There was some concern over getting Walpole moved out to 2021. I have received informal word that we are going to remain on 2020. So Senator Feeney, Representative Rogers, Kafka, Dooley, and McMurtry have done a great job advocating on behalf of Walpole, as has the Norfolk, Neponset Valley Chamber of Commerce with Tom O'Rourke and Harry Brisades with the Chamber of Commerce. So it looks like we're going to stay. The last couple of weeks I've gone in there, testified on behalf of Walpole. So for now, status quo on that one. More to come. Changes.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for everything. Okay. No vote of approval of minutes. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, any discussion? Before we do adjourn, remember next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, to go over the other articles, and the meeting is adjourned.